very famous people that are coming to New Mexico this weekend. President Joe Biden is coming to New Mexico, and Congresswoman Yvette Herrell will be back in the district this weekend. Good morning.
Good morning. I was sitting here waiting to know who the famous people were.
Well, it's you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah, I'm coming out. And I'm glad the president's coming. This is very important. He's coming really specifically because of the wildfire situation. And then I'm not sure if you saw the news, but another fire broke out. A forest fire broke out yesterday up in Cibola County. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I had invited Sheriff Tony Mace if he wanted to go down and talk about it with the president, but he actually just gave me word that I think things took a turn for the worse last night, and I don't have many details on that fire, the new fire, so he's not able to make it. But he is coming out because we're seeing historic wildfire damage, just this fire season. And of course, it started so early this year, with the McBride fire and the fires up by Nogal. And then we've got the Hermit Peak fire and the Calf fire. I mean, it's just horrible what's happening to New Mexico in terms of these wildfires.
Well, I'm glad you're able to be there, and I'm hoping you and the other congressional representatives and senators, whoever is in the district, will have the chance to meet with the president, and that is a good thing whenever they get out of Washington to see what's really going on. You just wonder if they actually get to see what's really going on when they come out from their Washington bubble.
Right, and I do not believe that the president will be actually touring the fire area, so to speak. I don't think they'll take him there. But the one thing I can say is, this pushback that most, our office did, and a lot of people pushed back on the U.S. Forest Service for doing these controlled burns. And as you know, that was the cause of this Hermit Peak fire. Mm-hmm. Doing these quote-unquote controlled burns, in the middle of spring when we have winds the way we have had, especially this year. And so, there's a moratorium on any kind of controlled burns for the next 90 days. So I think there's about 75 days left in that. But, this is just, again, another reason why we need to be taking a more proactive approach in managing our forests. We just have forests that are unhealthy. They're overgrown. It's damaging our watersheds. It's really impacting those that live in and around or recreate in these forests. And it just points to the solution of we need really to be thinking about how we manage our forests. And I think you and I talked about this. I introduced a bill last year called the Biochar Act, and what that bill would do would allow the foresters and Forest Service and private sector to go in and remove that low-grade timber, that 4, 5, 6 inch that has really not very much value, but does take up a lot of space in terms of water usage and all that in our forest, and then clean up the floor of the forest, which would put people back to work. It would help our forest become healthy, and then the remnants, this removal, would actually be turned into biochar, which is used in our ag industries, and it's when used correctly, it helps to retain water on our crops. It's just a win-win situation, and Chief Moore, the chief of the Forest Service, is very interested in the bill. But because it's not a Democrat bill, they're not going to take action on it. It's still sitting in committee, waiting to be heard. And that's what I think is the biggest crime happening in America right now, is this partisan politics has gotten in the way of actually finding and working on real solutions for the American people.
Well, no doubt about that. The government reported today the Consumer Price Index up 8% year over year. Yes. And we keep hearing from the White House and from the president, there's nothing we can do. There is no magic switch. There's nothing we can do. And I'm sure there is other people such as yourself in Congress and across the country that are just screaming at the administration saying, we could do this, we could do this.
Yep.
Why do you think it's not being listened to? Why are voices like yours not being heard at the administration level?
I think it's just really part of this agenda. And I know the president was on Jimmy Kimmel the other night and said, hey, our economy's great, we're doing great. No, we're not. Talk to the people in New Mexico and 2nd Congressional District who are now looking at $4.50 a gallon of gas. The inflation went up again today, not down. And we are truly on the cusp of a recession. when the GDP goes down instead of up 2 consecutive quarters, then we will really be tapping ourselves right into a recession. And of course, Q1, that was the result, and Q2 is not looking much better because these prices continue to go up, and the scarcity of food, things that we're normally used to seeing on the shelves in the grocery store, all that is impacting everyone. So I'm not quite sure where he's coming up with this, we're in kind of a good shape kind of a attitude, because we are not. And it's very frightening to think, how are we going to get through this? And how are people, here's what's interesting. The very people that this administration claims to want to help are the low-income earners, the low-wage earners. And these are the people, fixed-income, low-wage earners are the ones who are being hit the hardest right now with these policies. And yet, instead of thinking about how we can get our economy going, how we can start unleashing American energy and not rely on Venezuela and other countries, last week the administration was talking about putting the mask mandate back on people when you fly. I mean, it's like that's not helping. That's not the right conversation to be having.
They did. The CDC recommended it because of the monkeypox. It made a big deal out of it, and then very, very quietly pulled it back.
Yeah.
And they've really hurt their reputation with the vast majority of the American people. You want to listen to what the CDC says and other health experts say, and you hope that they are shooting straight with everybody. Just give us the facts,
right,
so we can make our decisions on this. But that doesn't seem how these agencies are handling things anymore.
No, I mean it's not taking, a rocket scientist to see the disastrous policies, and even what was it 10 days ago, when the cabinet level people were coming out saying, we just didn't see this coming. We just didn't know this inflation and this economy was going to. How you're the one who's supposed to know all this. How did you? I do give Yellen credit for saying, I just didn't see this happening. Well, it's because your talking points aren't matching up with reality. And that's the truth. I mean, the agenda is not panning out, and it's not reflective of what the American people are actually going through right now.
I read.
And so, here we have this.
That's right. I read where the president wants to put, electric car chargers everywhere. I saw where the governor of Colorado vetoed a bill in Colorado that would have mandated all new home construction be required to have a car charger as a part of, you couldn't build a new house in Colorado unless you also paid for the installation of a car charger. And the governor of Colorado is no, conservative Republican, but he said this is only going to raise the cost of housing, and it's already high enough as it is. So maybe there are some people on the other side of the aisle that are looking at things in a more logical standpoint. Where does the Congress stand right now? Is the Congress just really focused on January 6th and that committee hearing that was last night?
Yeah.
Or is there actual discussion going on other than guns? Is there actual discussion going on things that can be done to help alleviate some of the things that are affecting the American people right now?
No, it is not. There's nothing happening that would actually help us to, push our inflation down, get our gas prices down. You're right. The focus over this whole week that we've been here has been on the gun bills. And, of course, there were, I think, 8 or 9 that went through the House, almost all on straight party line votes. But here's the thing, and I had said this before, if we're really going to be honest about this gun violence, there are a number of things that we could be talking about, and it isn't about infringing on Second Amendment. It's, first off, we've now developed a culture where there is no accountability. I mean, look at what's happening. Broad daylight, you can go into a store, take a hammer, break into a jewelry counter and steal up to $1,000 worth of merchandise without so much as even a slap on the wrist. We've got to develop protocols for the schools so that they have the resources available to create safety, a safer environment. But how about hiring retired police, retired military? How about infusing some of this money on these, infrastructure bills instead of $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska or build golf courses or sidewalks? Why aren't we putting some of that money into these communities that need behavioral health and mental health services? And I met yesterday with a group of nurses from New Mexico, and the threat and the violence against nurses and first responders is through the roof.
Wow.
And a lot of it has to do with, people are getting on these drugs that are laced with fentanyl. They're very violent. People are in depression. I mean, these things are what is causing some of the problem in terms of just this crazy behavior. But look at social media. Look at what it's doing to our kids, these movies. There's just no accountability. Things have changed so dramatically since when we grew up. And, to just immediately think we're going to, grab everybody's guns or change the Second Amendment makes no sense at all when we're actually not addressing the root cause, of the issue, which is behavioral health, school safety, giving the police officers what they need, looking at this bail reform. How about getting the district attorneys to hold these perpetrators accountable when they commit the acts of violence? I mean, there are just a number of things we can be talking about, but the easiest and the most, the one everybody wants to see on TV is, we'll just take your guns. And that, I think most Americans, and I believe the Democrats in D.C. don't remember that gun sales in 2019 and 2020 skyrocketed. I think it was something like over 500% increase in purchases of guns by women, by African Americans. So we can have responsible gun ownership in our nation. We always have. But yet, we're not taking away the ability to manufacture vehicles when we see, what happened in Wisconsin last year when that truck plowed into that group. So the inconsistency and the double standard is alive and well, and I think the American people are seeing it. And on that January 6th situation, and I did an interview with ABC a couple of nights ago, and they asked me about it. They said, these hearings are going to be public. What are people in your district thinking about January 6th? And I said,
ooh, what did you say?
I said the truth. I said the only 6 people are worried about in my district are $6 gallon gas. That's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about their checkbooks, their pocketbooks, the kids getting a good education, the crime, uptick in crime, this fentanyl, this open border, this economy. I said, these are the real issues that people are concerned about, not kind of a dog and pony show, and they've yet to come up with any viable, answers. It really is sad that this is what we've come to. And here's what really bothers me. They're doing all this, and yet there are people, there are members of Congress that went out and said that people should be intimidating the Supreme Court justices after that leak. So of course earlier this week, Kavanaugh, there was a attempt on his life.
Right.
And the media is not even talking about that.
I know.
Yet, I tell you, it makes no sense. It's so crazy. And sadly, with all this, these distractions and all these things, that's exactly what's happening. It's distractions because they don't have a plan. They don't have policies that work. They're not going to bring the cost of fuel down. They're going to point fingers and keep distracting. And I think the American people are done with it. They are done with it.
Yeah. Well, the Prime Minister of Canada announced legislation that was going to be introduced to buy back all the guns. And the first thing that happened is all of the guns in Canada were bought. Gun dealers were running out of inventory because everybody ran out and bought guns. And then nobody talks about, or very few people, especially in the media and on the left, talk about the fact that there's a tremendous amount of gun crime in major cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City. And those are places that have very, very strict gun restrictions and regulations and laws, yet there seems to be a lot of gun violence in those cities. So I don't know if we're talking about the root cause. This thing in Uvalde was terrible, but why did this kid decide that he needed to do that, first of all? And then secondly, he paid full freight for those guns. He had tons of ammunition. He had a really expensive car that he was driving. Who funded all that? Where did he get the money for all that? I don't think working part-time at a fast food place, you have enough money to buy all this stuff. I don't hear anybody asking those questions.
They're not, and that's what's so crazy. And, right after that happened, of course, I was contacted by a few media sources. And I said simply, look, first off, today's not the day to start talking, legislation to grab guns. I mean, we need to let this community, these families, this state, this nation heal. And we don't even know all the details of what happened. And, now we've heard so many different things as far as the police chief, waiting, holding his men back. We've heard all kinds of things. And like you just mentioned, where was the funding source for all of these guns, and what was happening with this guy? But, that nobody wants to go ahead and take the time to wait for the answers, wait for the investigation, and make some real decisions or maybe even policy changes that would actually help. Instead, it's right away, let's go for the Second Amendment. And, that to me is something that we have got to be very careful of. And in fact, one of the bills, the red flag bill, well, that just gives the courts even more access to take guns, and it also may prohibit some of our veterans and others from purchasing guns. So again, what we're talking about now is they'll just do things that'll grab the headlines in the news with no accountability, with no real documentation on how it's going to even work. I mean, none of the bills that we passed this week would have helped that situation, but yet that's what's in the news, and that's what unfortunately some people will believe or listen to, when instead of really looking at where are we at with all of these other issues, like I mentioned, behavioral health, mental health, resource officers at the school, giving the police departments what they need, the coordination, between the different agencies. So it just is unfortunate. But again, I think people are starting to understand that none of the problems that we are facing as Americans are being solved. It's just another distraction, because they do not have a path forward to make things better for the American public. And I don't think there's very many people right now who can say they're better off now than they were, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
No, that's true.
And that's, what's happening. I mean, even my little nephew, who's a high school student, who's really not so political at all, but suddenly, he's really upset because a haircut that would cost him $7 or $8, is now $20. Well, for a junior in high school, that's a lot.
Yep.
And then filling up his car with gas. I mean, so if these younger drivers, these younger kids are starting to say, wait a minute, something's off,
Yeah.
And it's, I think, kind of prompting kids to get a little more inquisitive about why is this happening,
right.
And find out really some of the truths behind it.
Sure. We're talking with Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, and this past week in New Mexico was primary time, and Republicans picked a governor candidate and a lieutenant governor candidate to run against the incumbent, Michelle Lujan Grisham, in the fall. Any thoughts or comments on the primary process as you saw it from your place in Congress?
Yeah, I wish I could have been in New Mexico for the primary night, but, we had a lot of candidates running, and I think everybody worked very, very hard. And my hope is, and I think that we will as a state just get united. We know Mark's going to be our governor candidate. I think we have some great candidates up and down the ballot. So now is the time for us to really unite and rally behind all the candidates that are running, especially when we're looking at we're at this crossroads of the direction of our state and our nation. And I really believe that we'll see more people coming together to find those common solutions. And I'm hopeful, and we desperately need to take the House and the Senate in Washington, at least, if nothing else, to act as a backstop for some of these bad policies that are coming out. But I think by and large, take politics out of it. Just people are they're concerned, they're worried about what's going to happen. And we have an opportunity, but we have to get out the vote. I mean, everybody needs to get out the vote, because that's the only way, obviously, in this environment, that we're going to be able to make any kind of change. So I'm very hopeful. And we'll be working with all the candidates, and I think we'll all probably be working together, and, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a short and a long 5 months, that's for sure.
Now, I'm telling you, Mark is a meteorologist. If he made it rain in New Mexico, he'd win by a landslide.
He'd win by a landslide is right. We need to tell him that. Look, Mark, you get this rain on the prairie, and you get this rain in the mountains. You're in. You're golden.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can do that. He may do something besides run for governor.
That's true. I tell you, one of the things that's frustrating for me, because I live in Artesia, and today, you are my Congress representative in Congress today.
Yes.
When the new Congress is seated, potentially an activist attorney from Santa Fe is going to be the congressional representative for Artesia. Your district obviously got shifted. How do you see the prospects for that? And then I know Steve Pierce with the Republican Party's got a lawsuit pending regarding the redistricting. What do you hear on that? And because we need you to continue to be the congresswoman from representing Artesia, Just my personal opinion, of course.
It's mine too. So the lawsuit's still going, and of course the judge had said the court case definitely had merit, was very compelling. So ideally we'd love to have that through the Supreme Court before this election. It will not change the new map that we're having to run in for now. But depending on the outcome of a Supreme Court hearing, certainly they would absolutely have the ability to change, pick one of the maps that the commission did. So then for the next 9 years, we'd have a more normalcy. And you're absolutely right. And this is what, people ask me, are you upset about it? Well, yeah, I am. But what I'm more upset about is, just like you mentioned, all these communities, these three counties especially, and by the way, New Mexico is the number 2 producer of oil in the entire country. Mm-hmm. But when you have businesses and families, these are generational, some of them, a lot of them, that this industry has really built these communities and infused so much money back into the communities, into the future generations, those kids, that CTAC school they just built in Hobbs, but to the New Mexico state revenues and around the nation. This is so sad, because when you have people who have very openly, very publicly come out against fossil fuels, have introduced bills to compromise the ability for us to have a strong economy when it comes to oil and gas, raise royalty rates. When you have that, your voice in Washington, that is unfair, because all of those people, all those businesses, all the folks that are associated directly or indirectly with the industry will not have an opportunity, a voice, because just as I do, how the other two congresswomen feel about the industry, and it's not the same as you and I and all those people. So that to me is the real disappointment, because it pretty much silences those that do so much good for New Mexico, for America, and now they won't have a voice.
Yeah. Now, when you say the Supreme Court, are you talking about the New Mexico Supreme Court or the U.S.
Yes.
Supreme Court?
New Mexico.
New Mexico.
It'll go. Yeah. So it's in district court right now, and then I would just expect. I'm not for sure, but I would say, regardless of either way, if the judge rules in the Republican side, as far as state parties lawsuit, or the counties, the counties are getting involved with this. If he rules in favor of changing the map, I'm sure there would be then something filed by the Democrats to have it go to the Supreme Court. If he doesn't, then I think the Republicans, the counties, and really at this point in time, in my opinion, this is not a party thing anymore. It really is about people, about these communities, these counties of interest, this industry. This is very concerning for me, for the whole southeastern part of the state, because of just how serious this is and how important the industry is. So it would, either way, I think if the district court rules on it, either way, I think there would be then something filed in the Supreme Court of New Mexico. Yeah. And I personally believe that's where it will end up.
Well, we'll see how that winds up. Before we run out of time, obviously you're coming back to the district. The presidents are coming back to New Mexico, and the president's going to be in New Mexico. If you have the opportunity to have a minute with the president of the United States this weekend, what would you try to say? What message would you try to pass on to him on behalf of the voters here in southeast New Mexico?
I would say not only do we have catastrophic wildfires that are hurting our state, but we have a wide open porous border where we know tons of drugs are coming across that border. We're putting children in harm's way. We need help on that border to secure the safety and the sovereignty of our nation. And I would also say New Mexico depends on oil and gas production. The country depends on our ability to produce. We need to unleash our energy. We need to let our producers do what they do best, most affordably and cleaner than anywhere else. And we need to be real about energy demands, because they're not going to go down, they're going to go up. And oh, by the way, Mr. President, we can't follow your green agenda and go green and everybody get an electric vehicle without the help of fossil fuels. So those are the things I would remind him. The state is so blessed with so many opportunities and so many natural resources, but we're losing them to fire. We're losing them to executive orders. We're losing them because no one wants to face the facts that we have a problem with our southern border, and we need to do better for the people of New Mexico. It doesn't matter the party. All people in New Mexico deserve better than what they're being delivered from this administration.
Well, I hope you get the opportunity to do that, and I hope the president takes heart with what he sees and what the administration can do to help the people in New Mexico. That would really be the best thing to happen out of that. Congresswoman
Exactly.
Yvette Herrell, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy schedules can be for Congress people, and we appreciate the work you're doing, and good luck.
Well, thank you. And again, I'm just blessed to be here. And, I'm kind of excited to be able to maybe, like you just mentioned, highlight some of these other things that are important to New Mexico. So well, you can tell I'm not too shy. So I'll definitely be sure to deliver the message on behalf of our producers and on behalf of our state. Some of these things that are important to at least 2nd Congressional District, we need to have some real conversations and some real solutions.
Sure. Maybe you could help him up the stairs to Air Force One, and then you could have that conversation then. So,
Right. Maybe I can tell him there's a parade with 15,000 people down on the southern border waiting to see him.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Want to take a trip down there, and, just for him. So, yeah, he needs to be given a reality check. So,
yeah, that's true.
But I'm certainly wanting to have that opportunity to at least mention some of these other very critical issues to the president. Besides, obviously, we're praying and hopeful for our communities that are impacted by these fires, and just the communities alone, the families, the firefighters, everybody. There's so much collaboration happening to help New Mexico overcome these wildfires, and we're praying for rain and for resources. But really, there's just so many things happening that I hope I know I'll have the opportunity to mention a few other things to him, and that's why you guys sent me up there, to try to be the voice, and I'm certainly not afraid to do that.
Very good. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time, and safe travels back to New Mexico.
You bet. Okay, well, you have a great weekend, and thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye. Congresswoman Yvette Herrell